This product image have problem. Is it accessing product dot title? Is unable to fetch the title also. Once we will check API. Fake store API products 2. The data is not loaded. What we done? Right. So use state. Okay. Okay, it is taking some time. Okay, let it be. Okay, fine. It is taking a little while for loading this API. Fine, fine. Now what we'll do here is just we will display this. Yeah. Now we need to implement the functionality of this. That means I will keep here 300. Yeah. So what we need to do is we need to implement the functionality of this button, like and dislike. We need to display the counter. That means what is the value coming here? The state contains this time two values. What are the two values? One is likes, another one dislikes. So I am displaying them here. So beside this button, I am just adding. So here is simple count. I will define how many likes are there. We have to access state dot. What is it? We have to access likes. We need to define state dot likes. That means it will get how many likes are there. But here we are defining count. That means here the type we are returning is count. But actually it should be in which location? Likes. It should be in which location? Dislikes. That means likes value must be stored in likes. Dislikes value must be stored in dislikes. So that we can display likes here and we can display state dot what dislikes. We can keep those values then. So initially you can see 0 0 are there, and I click on like, then likes counter increments. This is not, dislikes is not incrementing. Dislike counter is how much? State dot dislikes plus 1. Okay, likes counter, dislikes counter. Let's check the value. Initial state. Where we are dispatching state, yeah, state dot likes and dislikes. Dislikes is okay, fine. Yeah, dislikes counter. Dispatching, the counter is incrementing where? Where is the dispatch? Dispatch just requires type only. So not a number means it is returning this count as a string. Not a number means it is returning a string. Which one? State dot likes. We will use parse. I will define parse int. Will convert this likes plus 1. Here also parse int. So state dot dislikes plus 1. Okay, dispatch dislikes. It is resetting the state ones. I will put here Where is the state defined locally? This is the state. Reducer is already outside. It is already outside. Where it is issue? Here also likes state dot likes plus one. They should access that likes and dislikes. Understood what happened? Understood what happened? Now it will work fine. What happened? Same concept. Remember that? Means we forgot this option. Actually, you remembered when you are defining with some user details. User details contains name, okay, and user details contains age. Now what we are doing on a specific button click, we are using so set state. Am I right? What we are setting here, we are setting name. Understood? We are setting name. After setting name, another location set state. There what we are setting. So we are setting age. Already we know this now. That means now what we are doing, this we are doing as of now. So due to that, what happens when it sets name, age is 0 na, but age must be previous value na, right? Whatever this we are accessing, for example, e dot target dot value, then age must be state dot age value. Am I right? So that is the problem occurred. That is the issue occurred here. That means what we are doing is we are maintaining the count. Understood? But we are ignoring the other state value. That means likes counter we are making, dislikes we are ignoring. Due to that, dislikes will set to 0 again. Right? So that is why we have to configure these two options. Right? Understood now? That means the point about this is dislikes counter is incrementing, likes counter is incrementing. What we have done is we taken state. In state, we are incrementing likes counter. At the same time, previous dislikes counter also should continue. So what we have to do, when you configured this return, it is returning only likes. Dislikes, it is not returning. If it is not returning, again, it will be how much? 0. That is the reason when you are clicking on likes counter will increment, but dislikes counter should continue from what it is already. In the otherwise, what happens? It is set to 0. So that is a simple problem occurred here that we have done. So what happens in this example now? User can click, the dislikes counter will be independent and the likes counter will be independent. We can configure likes and dislikes. This is one simple point how we can configure state. So state can handle any number of values, but don't forget to access the previous values from the state and use them. So the previous example, we just created one count and we incremented that count and decremented. But now we are maintaining two different counts, one for likes, another one dislikes. This is basic, another example for the same concept what we done yesterday. So this example is to understand how the likes and dislikes, this is use reducer. By using use reducer, that is the same concept. One more feature we added into this, right? This is generally predefined hooks we have. The major predefined hooks we learned here, the hooks configuration we have defined. Already we discussed what is difference between use context, use reducer, difference. What is difference between use state? Already we learned about that. Somebody is asking here already we learned that, right? Last session we discussed that as the primary difference. What is the problem in use context? What is the advantage of use reducer? These details we discussed. So technically, another important point now, we have to learn some more hooks are there, but those are not regularly used. What I will do is situation wise, I will explain them. Whenever our examples will come, we will implement them. Regularly in official uses, we use these hooks very common. Use state, use effect, use reducer, use context, right? And we learned additional one more, use cookies. These are the regular hooks. I given hundreds are there, right? Those are all depending on rare situations and requirements, we use them. Some other hooks we will learn depending on the situations. And what I will do is at the end, I will upload one guide for different hooks used in various requirements. You can go through them, but not guarantee that they will be used everywhere, right? Very rarely we use them, but you need to know, because in some situations you have to work with them. As I already told you that, so hooks can be created manually. You can create your own hooks. This is also asked in interviews, that is custom hooks. That means how we can create our own hook. Because what is the purpose of hook? What is the meaning of creating hook means? You are creating a new hook. Means what you are creating? In a real world project requirement, you are creating a hook. Means what you are creating. By creating a hook, what you are trying to achieve. If anyone asks why you need a custom hook, you are creating a custom hook. Why? What is the reason? Why you need a custom hook? Already we discussed that creating a hook, creating a custom hook, creating a custom hook is nothing but is creating a new service. Understood? Creating a new service. That means in React, you are creating A new hook means you are creating a new service. And what is the purpose of this service? You can inject in any component and you can use its functionality. So what is the purpose of service? Service is nothing but service is a predefined business logic, right? Business logic which you can implement and customize according to your requirements. That is what actually concept. For example, I will just give you one simple point. Like suppose for example, if I asked you, like, tell me how I can use a captcha in my website. For example, I am designing a login form. What is the threat of login registration form? The threat of login registration form is any robot can use it. How to prevent robots using my form? You have to put a captcha. What is captcha? Captcha is a service. Captcha is a service which uses an artificial intelligence program to verify whether the user is a human or robot. That means you can create a service so that anybody can inject that service and use it wherever he wants. That means we are creating a custom hook, means we are creating a reusable service. Creating custom hook is creating reusable service. That is the basic point actually. So how we can create a custom hook? What are the basic rules of creating custom hook? Let's see the basic how we can define. So custom hook is nothing but a service. You are configuring a service. For example, captcha is one such service generally we need. For example, if I want a Facebook login in my website, that means user will not with my registration form, means they will not fill my registration form and login. They will use their Google account to login, or they will use their Facebook account to login. What that service called as? Any idea? What that service called as? These are very general requirements. You designed a application, you cannot ask them to register. If you can say that if you are not interested in register, okay, you log in with your Google account. What this is called as? Any technical word? We call that as OpenID. That OpenIDs. OpenIDs, we call that as OpenID. OpenIDs. OpenIDs, who is this authentication? The OpenID uses open authentication. OpenID uses OAuth actually. Open authentication. The service is OpenID. That means you can search for OpenID service and you will get Facebook gives OpenID service, Google gives OpenID service. You just copy that and use it in your project. So in real world applications, we have to create our own services. That is done by using custom hooks. So what is rule here? First important is basic rules. Basic rules for creating a hook. So custom hook must be a function. Hook must be a function. So it cannot be a class. Hook is a function. Hook cannot be a class. So it's compulsory that custom hook must be a function. It must be a function. And very important. So hook, it must return a value. It must return a value. It means that, so hook cannot be void type. Understood? It cannot be void type. It must return a value. That means a hook, a service function must return some result, some value. It cannot be without return type. It cannot be void, right? So you need a custom hook, and the custom hook must be a function. It must be a function, and it must return a value. It must return a value. That means it must return a value means obviously it cannot be void, right? It cannot be void type. Another basic rule about the function is, so whenever you configure function, so make sure that function handles exception. Function handles exception, because if a hook cannot handle exception, then it leads to abnormal termination. That means you are using a hook in a component and it have some error. Then what will happen? Error means runtime error. If it is having runtime error, hooks services means they compiled successfully. Why you are injecting in a component, while injecting you provide some values into it and it is unable to handle, that leads to abnormal termination. In that case, it should handle exception. It should handle exception. That means any problems are there, it should report that problem. It should report the problem. That's very important, right? And it should handle exception. That means it should catch the problem and handle it. That is very important. That is good actually. Without that also works. But problem is, if any hook fails at the runtime and it is not reporting problem, then how do I know? Right? That is the reason it's make sure that the function handles exception and it returns exception. It returns exception. It returns exception. That is very important. This is a basic rule of creating a hook. Let's see how we can configure this. That means how we can create a custom hook here. So how we can manage the hook and define. Let's see one example now. Let's see how do we define the hooks. First step, what I'm doing is going to the project here, and in SRC folder, let's maintain a separate folder by name hooks, right? We will create a separate folder hooks and add a new file. So I'm giving this hook module name, right? This is, so I'm giving use. I will name as some, we will create hook for capture. We will create one, but first I will give, suppose we say fetch data .js. It is a hook. There is no fetch data hook in React. We are creating it. Our intention is this hooks makes fetching data from APIs easy, because every time to fetch data, what we are doing, we are writing fetch method, passing the URL, and then response. This all we will wrap into a hook, right? The hook will do that all work in the background and directly returns us the data. That will be better. That means now I am creating fetch data. So use fetch data. Okay. Now I am configuring here. So as we discussed, export, it is a function, export function, and function name is use fetch data. use fetch data is a function. Now what it should do? So it is designed just like a component, how you configure, right? So what we will do, so we will configure import, we will import use state, and we will import use effect. We will import these two, use state and use effect, we are importing here. After that, what we have to do, so after importing use state and effect, here what this have to do, configure state data and set data, and it is use state, right? So next what we have to configure use effect, and here in the use effect, now one more important point is that actually now this hook, fetch data hook, is whenever you access this hook, it is expecting URL. That means this hook takes a URL, fetch the data from that URL and returns you. That means now this hook is having a parameter called URL. That means this hook is taking the values. It is taking your URL, and what it have to do is it have to fetch data from that URL. Fetch data from that URL and return the data. That means here what we are doing, use effect. What use effect will do? It will use fetch. Fetch from where? URL. After that we configured, then it will get the response data and return response.json. After that it will use, then it will get the data and it will set the data. Am I right? That means set data, whatever data it collected from that URL, it will set. And as I told you that it can have a catch. Catch is nothing but it catches the exception. So it catches the exception, and what we will do is catch uses a callback function. Actually callback function is it catches an exception, and I want, so console.error, right? Console error to return the exception. Whatever exception it catches in, that means if it fails to execute anything. Now very important is this use effect should reload again whenever. So generally it loads how many times? It loads only once. When we return use effect, it will perform this functionality when? At the time of mounting. At the time of mounting it will do this work. Not only mounting, whenever URL changes, that means a new URL passed, this should execute again. That means actually component mounts only once, but whenever URL changes, it should load again. Load again. Whenever a new URL is provided, it should load again. That means what is the dependency? Dependency is URL. That means when the mount will happen again, when URL changes. If there is a change detection inside the URL, then it is going to happen. Now one more important. So what do you think? Is it okay? Fetching and storing everything inside the data, is it okay? Not okay, because as per the rules, this hook should return data. That means it should return the result. That means it should use return. What it should return? It should return what? It should return whatever the data it collected. Whatever data it collected, it should return. That means every hook must be configured with a return. It should return some functionality. It should return some data. It should return it. Okay, now it is done. The hook is ready. So now we can use this hook anywhere we want to fetch data. We can use this hook anywhere we want to fetch data. How to use this hook? Now let's go. We designed that hook. Let's go to our Example, in this example, here we are already fetching now. Here already we are fetching the data. Now what I will do, I will remove this now. That means I am not doing this, right? I am removing this. Okay, that means data is not coming, so data is not displayed here. Now we need to use our hook, so we have to first import it, right? Import, what we have to import, we have to import use fetch data from hooks. We have to import use fetch data from hooks. Now what this hook is doing, it is returning data. That means what we have to do in this function, in this function we will create a constant. We are expecting the data. Now this data is using the hook called use fetch data. Use fetch data, and what is the URL? The URL, that means you have to pass the URL from where data is coming, right? That is the URL you defined here as http://fake store API fakestoreapi.com/products/some3, like this. That means now what it is doing, it is fetching the result and it is storing that inside the data. That means it is fetching and storing that inside the data. That means now what we have to do is we have to use the data here. We have to use the data here. Directly we are using the data here now. Suppose what I am doing here, so here I have to use, what is it? Data dot image. Here we have to use data dot title. That means here there is no fetch return. There is no fetch return. Fetch related all logic is hidden now. It is defined in a service. It is configured in a service. That means now I am not using this anymore, right? So this is for collecting the data and storing the data. I am not using this anymore. Directly I am fetching the data and displaying, right? Here it have to fetch the data. API takes little time, right? It will take some time for mounting, right? It will take some time, right? Yeah. So here what the purpose here is, we configured the data, and what it is going to do, it have to get the data and display, right? Anything you can configure, anything you can define, you can configure. Actually, so you have to make sure that what kind of logic you are trying to implement in your hook. What kind of logic you are implementing, you can use anywhere. For example, let's see, I will go to any component where we are returning all the data. Any component is such. Okay, let's create one component. What is it? Custom hook demo.js. Let's create one component here. That means we are creating export default function, and the function is custom hook demo. That is the function. Okay, it will return so some container, right? So container, so fluid. Okay, here I need to display all the products list. I want to just display the products list. You can use all the technique. Now I will use this custom hook demo in the startup. We will put custom hook demo in the startup. So that products is coming fine. Okay, now what we will do here is we need to inject the hook which we want to use. What we have to do, we need to configure. So here import, so that is use fetch data from hooks. And here what we have to do, just we need to configure. So we need to configure some data, and we need to use that use fetch data from which URL http:// store api.com / what products. It is arena, it is returning array. Now what you can do here, we can define, and I can just put here an ordered list, like, right, ordered list, and we can configure here what is the data. Data is a map, right, and it is accessing every product, am I right, and it is printing every product as a list item, and here we have to define the product dot what title. That means it is trying to access and return all the data coming from the APIs. So will take some time. Yeah. So this is the custom hook that you created to manage the data and use the data. Actually, what you can do, you can configure so many other techniques also, like what you can define again, use effect here, right? You can create a local state, you can store the data into the local state, and you can access and use it. But that is not required. Directly we can access because it is returning the data. It is directly returning the data. This is the concept of custom hooks. So what are the basic rules? A custom hook must be a function, and it must return a value. It cannot be void type, and make sure that the function handles the exception if there are any problems, right? Example I will just give here. First, what we do is create a new folder. So the folder is hooks, and add a new file. And what is that here? Use fetch data .js. In this we are adding this logic. So this is use fetch data, that is the logic, right? So now here we are next step, we are importing, right? Import hook into any component, and you can implement the functionality. For that you have to use this one simple example how it can work, right? Now let's see another example I will give you, and one task I will give you, you try, right? Another example, suppose we will try to create some hook like captcha. Suppose if I created a login screen, I want a random code to be generated, right? Let's see how do we create now. Let's create here. User login is already there. In index, what we will do is we will keep user login in the startup. User login is in the startup, that is already having. Now here, suppose in the user login page, here I am adding extra another data term, that is verify code. Okay, here I need to generate a random code. There I need to generate a random code, and I need that in every form, registration form, login form, wherever I want that code. How we can configure this? So let's go to the hooks now, right? So what we will do, go to hooks and create a new file, that is use, and this is actually captcha, okay, .js. Use captcha.js. Fine. Okay, now here I will import. So use state and use effect from React, and I will create a function, export function, and the function name is use captcha. That is the function. Okay, what this use captcha function have to do? So it's not necessary that every time hook can take a parameter. So what I will do is I will create a constant. Here I will put code, and this code use state. Okay, and here I will put as a set code. Okay, now what should happen is whenever it loads, I will use effect, and this use effect, what it should do is this use effect have to generate a random code. That means dependency is empty, it should generate a random code. So what I am doing here is var I will declare variable some a is equal to math dot random. You know this, no? Math dot random will generate a random number, but actually random number starts with 0.76, right? I will multiply with 10, then you will get a positive integer value. Okay, similarly I have other values, a 6-digit number. Okay, a b c d e and f. So 6-digit random number is generated. After generating that, what we will do is we will use here set code. Understood? Set code. This set code is going to put here an expression like this. Here math dot round, math dot round, I'm using round a value, because sometimes fractions will come 1.4, 1.6, it should round to the nearest. So math dot round, this is one. Okay, copy and put a space second number b, and put a space third number c, and some space, this is fourth number, so d, and some space fifth number e, and sixth number f. Okay, a 6-digit number separated with space, a 6-digit number. Now what this function have to do, already we learned it written, right? This function have to return the code. This is how we created, this is how a simple code is created. That means what this is going to do, captcha is going to return a code. That code is nothing but a random number, is a random number. It is going to generate a random number. Actually, when you call this in any function, so let's go to user login. In user login, I have to access that and use it. I have to access and use it. So import which one? Use captcha. You have to import use captcha from captcha. We have to import this. After importing, now what I will do is here I will create a constant, and here I will put code. Okay, this code is using use captcha that returns the code. Actually, you can see this is returning the code. Am I right? That is returning the code. This is going to return the code. Now what I have to do is this code I need to display in some location, right? I need to display in some location. Where to display that? Here I have to display the code. That means whatever the code is collected, that is the random code. That means we are going to generate a random code using captcha, and we are going to implement that random code here. So you can see here some problem. what use captcha is returning. We'll do one thing. Use effect is there. Undefined. It is not related to this at all. Captcha is returning a number. That's fine. This code hook rule is working fine, because as per the hook rule, every hook must be called inside a function. That is working fine. Where is it? Code. It is not accessible. What error coming? Object with keys. What it is returning? Code. Acha. Fine, it's working. Okay. It is returning an code object actually. And I am trying to print that directly. It is returning object now. Right? It is returning an object. I am directly trying to print that object. Right? So object, it returns. And it will return this code we have to access. So now you can see it is returning a number. And every time it can return a new number. Let's refresh. Then it will get again with a new number. A random code is generated. So we created a custom hook which can change the code. That means which can generate a random number. We can put any button, like suppose what we do, we are going to user login, right? And here we will put a button. So here we will put a button. So and say new code, right? Or you can just put a refresh like option. And on this click, what should happen? One more code should come. Here, what we can do, you can write, so function, what is it? Handle code. Okay. And what this handle code have to do? It have to access this and display. That means we need to access that and display. That means we need to configure this. If I have to access this and again display, then you have to better store in a local variable. You can store in a local variable and you can reload it again and again whenever it is clicked. So the concept here is whenever it is accessed, that means whenever it is accessed, it will come with a new code, right? So the hook advantage is you are creating a reusable service. As per the rule, what that should happen? It should be a function and it must return a value. It's compulsory that it must return a value. And sometimes if anybody asks like, can hooks be parameterized? Right? Already we saw previously, hook is parameterized. Previous hooks are parameterized. Why? Because change. You can pass parameters into a hook. Just like use state is a hook which can be parameterless or parameterized. You can pass an object or a string, any type of value into this. So this is another example. This is another example for hook. Means how do we create a service? What is it? CAPTCHA. Like CAPTCHA I just designed. So use CAPTCHA.js. In this, we designed a hook like this. Right? And importing and using, you can put here another one, user login.js. I will copy that entire code. It is already there with you. Okay. On user login.js, we have to just access that hook here, right? We have to import the CAPTCHA hook, and this CAPTCHA hook must be accessed and displayed here. So wherever you want, you can display that and show, right? In any component you can inject. Wherever you design a form, you can do. Now, I will give you one task. You try to do that. That means what you try to do is create a custom hook for sorting data. This is very frequently given task for interuse actually. That means sorting data means you design a hook which must able to sort and display the data. That means suppose we are using array, right? What we have to do, see here we have an array. Array contains A, B, some values are present, okay? Some values are present. Any value can be there inside it, okay? Now what should happen is I will have to create a use sort. Right into this, if I pass the data, it should sort and display. Understood? That means use sort hook must able to sort and display. Similarly, many times another task like create a hook for so filtering formatting also. For example, create a hook into sentence case. That means actually filtering, formatting, sorting are very frequently used. Suppose I want to display some title in a capital letters, then we can use uppercase, lowercase. You will see such hooks very common, right? Toggle hooks. So many people create like that. Why? Because in their project they regularly need them. That means for formatting, for filtering, for sorting, for searching, for every purpose they create hooks, right? Sentence case means suppose I entered some toggle like welcome, right? ML, something like this I return, then it should return to take and it should return welcome to HTML. That means first letter must be caps, all other must be lower. That means it should return in this way. I hope you can try. Right? These two try how we can create sort, how we can create these type of hooks. Right? For that actually you need some string functions knowledge and array functions knowledge. To create a sorting hook, you need this because sorting hook is required in almost all data tables. When we design a data table, we will put a sort button. And when user clicks on the sort button, it will sort the list and display. For that, we need to create a hook for sorting the data. We need to create a hook for filtering the data also. When we are working with data, I will show you such points, right? But if you can first do this, that's very good, right? Then we will see in the next session. Now this is enough about hooks. As of now, what we have learned is enough about hooks. So in the next session, what you have to do is we will start discussing about how we can handle AJAX calls with API, right? Call for API. How we can use AJAX call for APIs. Already we are doing AJAX call with fetch, but by using third parties, by using jQuery, we have to learn how to use the AJAX calls in a better way to fetch the data from API and present them. Then we can go with a concept routing, which is a very bigger one. That these two are major. That we'll see in next session. Tomorrow we will do. We'll have session tomorrow. Okay now? Everyone okay for that? Tomorrow session okay? Right? So we will have a session tomorrow. Then we will continue in tomorrow's session. In tomorrow's session, we will see how to work with APIs. Okay? Right. Tomorrow we'll continue that.